While working on a personal project, I kind of created a database out of CSV. Well, sort of. You see, while working on my project, I kind of needed to store some data for later use. Not only during the runtime, but also for future uses. But me being me, I didn't want to go through the pain of setting up a traditional database like Postgres, MySQL, or MongoDB. Instead, I wanted something simple, lightweight, and preferably something that didn't need any setup. For a while, I was considering using SQLite, but then I remembered CSV. It was perfect for the type of data that I wanted to store, which would amount to simple strings and numbers. And it was light and portable, which was perfect. It suited all my needs and checked every boxes that I wanted. So I started on my quest to find an npm package that would let me treat CSV as a database. But after hours of scrolling through npm and testing quite a few packages, I was unable to find something that worked for me. Most of the packages were either outdated or didn't provide the functionalities I was looking for. So like any good engineer, I decided to build one myself. Before I started to work on this project, I decided to set some goals first. It needed to do a few things that I required. First, validate the data against a schema before adding it to the CSV. That way, there would be some uniformity to the data. Have a proper query function. That would make the retrieval and comparing of the data much easier. Have some kind of edit function. That would let me edit the data if something went wrong. These were some of the functionalities that I was looking for and was crucial for my project. With the goals outlined, I began coding. After hours of grinding away at the keyboard, this was what I was left with. 240 lines of pure madness. Let me explain. The only real dependency of this project is Zod. Zod's gonna help with the schema creation and validation. It has a pretty simple but solid API for this kind of stuff. So I decided to let it handle all the schema validation. Speaking of schema, here is the schema type for all the types of data that's supported. It supports all the major types such as numbers, booleans, and strings. When initializing the class, we need to provide it with the CSV file and the directory of where it's stored. That way, we'll have an idea on where the files are stored. Also, there is no default location, so you can choose where to put the CSV files. It is important to note that a single instance of the class can only work with a single CSV file and schema. For separate files and schema, multiple instances should be used. The schema factory is responsible for creating the schema. It's similar to a Mongo schema where you can define the property name and the type of data that it will store. The schema factory will then produce a Zod object accordingly and set it as the schema for the instance. This schema will be used when interacting with the database in the future. The insert method will use the previously stored schema to validate the data before appending it to the file. If the data doesn't match the schema, then it will throw an error. It will also throw an error if the schema isn't defined. The insert many method does the same thing but multiple times. It has all the same validation and will throw the same errors. The getAll method returns an array of all the elements in the file. The elements of the array consist of objects that follow the schema previously created. If we want to query the data, we can use the findOne method and pass in the property as well as the value we want to find. It will go through a couple of stages of filtration before returning the element. If there is more than one element that has a similar property, it will return the best suited one. If you believe that there are multiple entries that matches all the parameters, then you can use the findAll method. It does the same thing except it returns an array of all the elements found. There are a few more methods that will let us do stuff like delete one, delete many, update many, and delete all. Together, they create a really simple and easy to implement API that helps us work with the CSV files. So now the question is this enough to be a database? Well, most of you will disagree. If anything, this is just another CSV library. And you'd be right. But that's not the main purpose of this. I don't know about you guys, but during development, there have been countless times where I needed to store some data for future reference. And I didn't want to set up an entire database just to store some names and addresses. My aim with this project was always to create something that can be used instantly without any special setup. That way I can focus on what's really important, the logic of my next $1 million side hustle. If you want to check out the code for yourself or maybe use it in your projects, I'll leave a GitHub link down in the comments below. That's all from me today. Thank you for watching, and I have a special video coming up for you guys soon, so don't forget to subscribe for that. And see you later.